We are back. It's the Joe Holka Show presented by Line Movement. And guys, week 17 already, but it's a lot different than a normal week. So we are going to go through some of the motivations for these in particular teams. Also going to touch on some teams that might be kind of getting some of the younger guys involved because they don't have much to play for, right? It's a very unique week overall in the NFL. I know we got a bunch of people in the chat right now live, but if you're watching this on the Line Movement channel later, definitely come check out the live streams over on my channel, the Joe Holka YouTube channel. It is on Wednesdays, Mondays at 3 p.m. Eastern time. We stream each and every week. Obviously, things are changing, right? So there's going to be a lot of cool stuff happening on the channel. Obviously, a ton of awesome stuff happening on the Line Movement channel. So I thought it'd be good to start off the stream with this video because I think before we even dive in to the first look, before we even dive into anything based around week 17, we each actually probably should just go team by team, figure out which types of teams we should be targeting in the betting markets, maybe which types of teams we should be fading because they don't have a lot to play for. But I think motivation is extremely, extremely important in week 17. Obviously, a lot of news will be coming up as the week goes on as well. So be sure and check out all the kind of updates and videos that we have coming on both channels throughout this week. It is very important, guys. So we're going to kind of wrap things up, I guess, for week 17. I guess a lot of people that have been probably watching from a season-long perspective are looking for something new. It's a great time to jump into DFS. It's a great time to jump in to sports betting. So hopefully you guys will be along for the ride. Also, obviously, playoffs right around the corner here. So I thought it would be cool to start off and go division by division, team by team. So we're going to start in the AFC East on this one. So Bills, Dolphins, Patriots, and Jets. Obviously, we still don't know exactly at the time of this recording what's going to happen in this Patriots and Bills game tonight on Monday Night Football. But I think what's interesting is obviously the Bills 11-3 on a 4-game winning streak. This is a team that still has a lot to play for. The team that still has a lot going on. This is a pretty big one tonight to see if they can get to 12 wins, which could be a pretty key number for the Dolphins in particular. So let's talk about the Dolphins for a second. So what's really important to know here, obviously they kind of came and pulled off like that improbable comeback win against the Raiders. So they basically just need to win in week 17 to clinch a playoff spot. So Miami is currently the number 5 seed in the AFC playoff race. So basically the Dolphins have the same record as the Colts right now and the Ravens. And basically it goes to the best win percentage in conference games at that point. So that we're going to get deep into these tiebreakers as well. The divisional tiebreaker was something that was actually used to eliminate Cleveland. So basically Baltimore does own the tiebreaker based on head-to-head winning percentage. So a lot of moving parts here. It'll kind of, we'll bring it all together at the end of this video. But I think what's, I guess, important to know, Miami needs to win this week. So basically it's perfect timing because they do get the Bills in week 17. The Patriots, we'll see what happens with that. Obviously, they've been eliminated already. A little bit more important for the Bills and for the Dolphins for this game tonight on Monday Night Football. So the Jets, what is there to talk about with the Jets, guys? They are 2-13. They're 1-7 on the road, 1-6. I guess on the road, 1-7 at home rather. So 2-game win streak for the Jets. What are they doing, right? Is 2 wins enough for them to keep Adam Gase around? We'll see, right? So 2 wins in a row. They basically played themselves out of the number 1 pick in the draft, which is a very New York Jets thing to do. But they will have the number 2 overall pick. They get the Patriots in week 17. So let's move on to the AFC North, a little bit more of an interesting division here. So let's start with the Pittsburgh Steelers. They're 12-3, and they are on a 1-game win streak, even though they haven't been kind of playing very well down the stretch. They did clinch the AFC North title with that win over the Colts this past week. Pittsburgh currently the number 2 seed in the AFC playoff standing. So basically what we need to kind of focus on here is that if the Bills win, obviously that's a big difference here. Pittsburgh would fall to the number 3 seed since Buffalo does hold that head-to-head tiebreaker. So they get the Browns in week 17. Definitely an interesting one to watch, even though that they are in the playoffs. There can still be a little bit of movement here for the Pittsburgh Steelers. So Baltimore, this is an interesting one, right? So the Baltimore Ravens are currently in a 4-way tie with the Colts, the Browns, and the Dolphins at 10-5. Crazy. Baltimore is a team that I don't think anyone wants to face in the playoffs. So how they get there is with a win this coming week. They are currently the number 6 seed in the playoff race if that happens. So the Dolphins would win the tiebreaker over the Colts and Ravens based on their best win percentage in conference games, but the Ravens do hold a tiebreaker over the Colts since Baltimore beat Indy earlier in the season. So again, a lot of moving parts. I'll try and break it down as simply as I can here. The division tiebreaker was also like I said, what eliminated Cleveland in this formula, since Baltimore owns that tiebreaker based on head-to-head. So remaining schedule for the Ravens, they get the Bengals in week 17. Very, very interesting. Bengals 4-10, so not a whole lot of implications there for the Bengals. Basically what you need to know is they've won back-to-back games, but they're currently out of a spot for a top 5 draft pick at that point. So it's almost like winning games this point of the year. It's nice in theory, but sometimes can hurt you a decent amount in terms of the future. I skipped over the Browns, so this one's a little bit, I guess there's still a little bit more to kind of shell out here. A loss to the Jets doesn't actually end the Browns' playoff hopes. Believe it or not, Cleveland's in the playoffs basically with a win next week, despite that 4-way tie that we are just talking about with Miami, Baltimore, and Indy. The Browns are currently the number 7 seed in the AFC playoff race. So the Dolphins win the tiebreaker over the Colts, the Ravens, actually, based on that winning percentage in conference games. So interesting dynamic in the AFC North. This is the one that I think we're going to be focusing on the most in week 17 in terms of which teams really have a lot to play for still. A lot of movement could be happening out of the AFC North. So let's move on to the AFC South. So we have the Titans, the Colts, the Texans, and the Jaguars. Not a great stretch for these teams. Obviously, 4 losses in a row for the Texans. The Jaguars have lost 14 straight, but let's start at the top with the Titans. So basically what you guys need to know, the Titans did lose to the Packers on Sunday Night Football, but they can still clinch an AFC South, crown if they win over Houston in week 17. So they'll also clinch the division with a Colts loss. The Titans have the tiebreaker over the Colts based on the best win percentage in division games. So they get the Texans in week 17. That'll be an interesting one to watch in the division. But let's move on to the Colts next. The Colts are again in a 4-way tie for the playoff race with the Browns, Dolphins, and Ravens. They need to win in week 17. At least one of those teams needs to lose also to make the playoffs. So due to that losing, they basically don't have the tiebreaker. So that's the key thing to guess focus on with the Colts. So based on the winning percentage in those conference games, again, that's the tiebreaker we're going to continue to hammer home here. The division tiebreaker was used to eliminate Cleveland again. So it's an interesting one. The Colts definitely motivated going into this game, and they get the Jaguars in week 17. So that's positive. Houston Texans. The Texans are basically, they don't have a top 5 pick. That belongs to, I guess, some of these other teams that we'll touch on at the bottom of these divisions. But they do get the Titans in this spot. Again, that pick that they have from Miami is actually 4th overall. So they could kind of back in to a top 5 draft pick based on that trade that they made. Some tough trades overall for Houston, but we'll see how it works out for them. At the very bottom of this division, the Jacksonville Jaguars, they did clinch the number 1 overall pick. So hopefully better times ahead for the Jacksonville Jaguars with their loss to the Bears and the Jets beating the Browns. They lock that one in. They get the Colts in week 17. AFC West. This is one of those divisions that very top heavy, but at times this year, it looked like we get the Raiders in the playoffs. But let's start with Kansas City. They did clinch home field advantage and a first-round bye in the AFC with their win over the Falcons. Andy Reid has already came out and said that some key starters will not play in Week 17 against the Chargers. So that's what we should be focusing on, these teams that don't necessarily have a lot to play for. Kansas City's one of them. So they get the Chargers, like I said. Vegas Raiders. So the Raiders have been eliminated from the playoffs with their loss to the Dolphins. Vegas misses the playoff 4th consecutive year. So this is going to be one of those ones that, like, yes, we need to keep an eye on news throughout the week. Maybe the Raiders play as normal, but I mean, there's really not a lot for them to play for at this point. Maybe we start to see some younger players get a little bit more involved. Those are the situations that are a little bit more in flux. So from a DFS perspective, it's a lot harder to figure out where to go with those type of teams. So the Chargers played themselves out of that top 10 draft pick with the win over the Broncos last week, but I mean, they've already got their franchise quarterback with Justin Herbert, so not too worried about that. They get the Chiefs, a Chiefs team that's probably going to be trotting out some second string players. So maybe interesting. Those ones are kind of fun in some ways, because if you bet right on one of these teams that doesn't have a lot to play for, but the other side of it, there's just not going to be a lot of resistance there. So I think the Chargers are interesting. We'll talk about that with Jake. Denver Broncos, 5-10. They've lost 2 straight. Definitely a season to remember, or I guess a season to forget for the Broncos. They locked up a top 10 draft pick with the loss in week. They actually do lock up a top 10 draft pick with the loss in week 17. So they're almost playing, hopefully, to lose to back into a top 10 pick. So definitely not a lot of motivation there. These are the type of situations where you'll see them just trot out a bunch of young players to get them a little bit of experience and I guess play hard. But I guess getting into that top 10, a priority for sure. They will be against the Raiders in week 17. Let's move over to the NFC here. And let's start with the NFC East. Washington football team. What you guys need to know here is, despite that loss to Carolina, Washington remains in first place of the division. So a win over the Eagles in week 17, they're your NFC East champion. Obviously, some of the news that comes out today that they were actually going to waive quarterback Dwayne Haskins, which is pretty wild overall. It sounds like it was a little bit to do with some off the field type of antics. Obviously, he's been violating the COVID-19 protocols. He hasn't looked very good on the field either, guys. So he was benched last week for Taylor Heineke. Tough scene for this franchise overall, but there's a lot to like on the defensive side of the ball, which we've been talking about for what seems like every year or every week this entire season. So they get the Eagles in week 17. Still a lot to play for. So they'll be playing hard. Dallas Cowboys. They are 6-9 in this very, very gross division, but they've won 3 straight, guys. So the Cowboys kept their division title hopes alive with that win last week against the Eagles. They eliminated Philadelphia from the postseason, but they need to beat the Giants and have Washington lose to Philadelphia. So they got the Giants in week 17. The Giants, not a lot to really go over here. Their division title hopes, major hit with that loss to Baltimore. So the Giants need to beat Dallas and have Washington lose to Philadelphia to capture the NFC East. They could still get in, which is crazy. 5-10. They've lost 3 straight. Still in the hunt. Pretty nuts. But they got the Cowboys, a hot Cowboys team here. So the Philadelphia Eagles, they were eliminated, like I said before, from the playoffs after that loss to the Cowboys last week. They're in a position for a top 10 draft pick, missing the postseason for the first time since 2016. They get Washington in week 17. NFC North. Let's skip down here a little bit. We just watched the Green Bay Packers clinch home field advantage with that win over the Bears. That win last night, they get the Bears in week 17 to clinch home field advantage. So 12-3, they've won 5 straight. This offense has just been firing on all cylinders. And it looks like Aaron Rodgers is going to continue to throw around the goal line as well. So I like that quite a bit. They own the tiebreaker over the Saints based on the victory over New Orleans earlier this year. So those head-to-head battles are stuff that really pay off for some of these top-end teams also. So what's interesting is even after that win over Seattle, they would actually lose to the Seahawks in a 2-way tie at the top of the NFC. So Bears in this one, I guess this time of year, playing in Chicago, playing in Lambeau, it's probably going to be a little bit of weather in this one as well, but we'll see. Chicago Bears. The Bears take over the number 7 seed in the NFC with that win over the Jaguars, that blowout win for sure. That just Jaguars team just absolutely reeling. Win over the Packers in week 17 or a Cardinals loss means that Chicago will make the playoffs. So they got to beat the Packers in this one and get a little bit of help along the way. Minnesota Vikings, 6-9, another season to forget for the Vikings. It's the first time they've been out of the postseason in, I guess not in a while, second time in 3 years. But this team is just in general, it feels like a team that makes the playoffs, but never really truly makes a run. But they're never really bad enough to get a primary draft pick either. So with that loss on Friday to the Saints, they are out of the postseason. They get the Lions in week 17. The Detroit Lions. This is they've lost 10 games in a season for the third consecutive year. Obviously, they fired their coach. They were absolutely blown out by the Buccaneers last week. They'll be playing for a top 10 draft pick against the Vikings. So these are interesting situations. Not a whole lot to play for overall. You might end up seeing some younger guys in this game, especially on the Lions side. NFC South. We were just talking about the New Orleans Saints. what you guys need to know here is that they are a half game behind Green Bay for the top seed in the conference. So with the victory over the Saints that victory over the Saints Friday, Green Bay still has a chance to get that top seed. So the Packers do own the head-to-head tiebreaker. Like I said, New Orleans has the tiebreaker over Seattle for the number 2 seed. So that's kind of interesting dynamic to see how that shuffles out at the top of the NFC. The Saints have clinched the NFC South, but they can still earn that number 1 seed overall. So definitely a spot where we think the Saints are going to be playing hard here. So we'll see if Kamara can, I guess, would you guys be happy if he got 3 touchdowns instead of 6 this week? Great spot for Kamara yet again. Tampa Bay clinched his first playoff berth since 2007 with that win over the Lions last week. The Bucs are currently the number 5 seed in the NFC playoffs, can clinch that spot with a win over the Falcons in week 17. So those Falcons, we'll scroll down to these Falcons, 4-11. They've lost 4 straight. They are in line for a top 5 pick after that loss to the Chiefs last week. They get the Bucs, as I said. Carolina, 5-10. They have won, I guess, just 1 in a row here, but they've been just underwhelming. Not underwhelming against the spread. We got Teddy covers over there, but the Panthers were eliminated from the playoffs, still in play for a top 10 pick, even with that win over Washington last week. So NFC West, Seattle Seahawks. Like I said, the Seattle Seahawks can clinch the NFC West after Sunday's win over the Rams. Seattle is the number 3 seed in the conference, currently losing that tiebreaker to New Orleans. So we'll see what happens with that. They get the 49ers in week 17. The Rams, the Los Angeles Rams. The Rams control their own playoff fate, which is always where you kind of want to be at this time of the season for sure. Los Angeles clinches a playoff spot with the win over the Cardinals in week 17. Even if the Rams lose, they'll make the playoffs. They will make the playoffs if Chicago loses to Green Bay. That's what these notes are all over the place, guys. There's so many different scenarios that can happen for some of these teams. So even if the Rams lose, they'll make the playoffs if Chicago loses to Green Bay, and they will get the number 7 seed in the NFC. Arizona will be the number 6, but the Rams are eliminated with a loss and a Bears win, so they get the Cardinals in this one. That's going to be a game to watch. We'll see what happens with the health of Kyler Murray in this one. Arizona Cardinals can clinch a playoff berth with a win over the Rams if the Cardinals and Bears win. The Bears are the number 6 seed. The Cardinals are the number 7 seed if the Cardinals win and the Bears lose. Both the Cardinals and the Rams will get into the playoffs with the Cardinals as the number 6 seed. Rams is the number 7. This is a division that's definitely going to see some movement, a lot to play for sure. We mentioned San Francisco. They're playing the Seahawks. 49ers are eliminated already from the playoff race, but they can play spoiler for the Cardinals with an upset victory against the Seahawks. So let's recap this. The Browns, the Ravens. Let's go full screen for this. The Browns, the Ravens, the Colts, and the Dolphins are all 10-5 and fighting for that final AFC playoff spot. The Steelers clinched the AFC South. The Chiefs clinched home field advantage and their first round bye in the AFC with their win over the Falcons. With the Bears, who took over that number 7 seed in the NFC with a blowout win over the Jaguars last week, they can still get in with a win in week 17 or a Cardinals loss. So despite that loss to Carolina, Washington still remains in first place in the NFC East, which is pretty interesting. A win over the Eagles this week will clinch that division, although the Cowboys and Giants would still win the division next week as well. So that's could still win, I should say. So that's it, guys. It's a mouthful. I'm going to be referring back to this video quite a bit as we progress through this week, because I think this is we're going to be focused on this quite a bit from a DFS and betting perspective for sure. So let me know in the comments some starters that you're going to be targeting, avoiding in week 17. Again, I stream every Monday, Wednesday, Friday on the Joe Holka YouTube channel, and consider subscribing to this channel if you haven't already. Toss a like on this video, and we will see you guys next time.